It was the announcement no one thought they'd hear. Just before midnight, Buckingham Palace confirmed what had long been whispered behind gilded doors. Queen Camilla's family has been officially removed from the royal succession. No warning, no ceremony, just one royal signature that redrew the bloodline of Britain. For decades, questions surrounded Camilla's children, her legacy, and her place in the Windsor dynasty. Now the answer has come, cold, final, and absolute. The king's message is clear: the crown belongs to Windsor blood alone. But behind the royal seal lies heartbreak, loyalty, and a family divided. The royal decision that shook Britain. It began quietly, a Buckingham Palace statement released at 11:42 p.m. on a chilly Thursday night in London. Few were awake to see it live, but within minutes, the news swept through British media like wildfire. The document confirmed what royal watchers once deemed impossible. King Charles III had officially removed Queen Camilla's family from any and all royal succession or privilege. It was a statement just 56 words long, but its meaning shattered decades of speculation and sentiment. His Majesty has determined that the line of succession and associated privileges shall remain strictly with the House of Windsor, the statement read. Calm, clinical, almost cold. Yet beneath that formal tone was an emotional earthquake. For years, whispers had persisted. Could Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, ever hold royal status? The king had now ended the guessing game, permanently. According to insiders at Clarence House, the decision wasn't spontaneous. It followed months of consultation between the Lord Chamberlain's office, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and the Privy Council. Legal documents were finalized in early October 2025 under the title Royal House Clarification Act. Sources close to the process said Charles signed the papers himself, alone, after 2 private meetings with senior aides. He knew it would cause pain, one official said, but he believed history demanded clarity. By dawn, news anchors broke the story live across BBC One, Sky News, and ITV. Social media exploded. Some called it a return to royal discipline. Others branded it a betrayal within the crown. Whatever the interpretation, the outcome was irreversible. King Charles had drawn a new line in royal history, and the monarchy, once again, was forever changed. But behind this official language and midnight signature was a family already divided by quiet discomfort. Since the earliest days of Charles and Camilla's marriage, a delicate tension simmered, not in headlines, but in whispers. What began as personal accommodation had long since become a public balancing act. And now, with one ruling, that unspoken divide had turned into a permanent boundary. The quiet divide becomes a public line. From the moment Charles married Camilla Parker Bowles in April 2005, royal protocol faced its hardest test in generations. The monarchy, still healing from Diana's shadow, struggled to integrate 2 families, one royal by blood, the other private by life. Tom Parker Bowles, then 30, and Laura Lopes, 27, were accepted cordially, but never wholly. They were tolerated, not embraced, said a longtime courtier. They were guests in a house that never truly opened its doors. For years, their appearances beside the Windsors seemed harmless, a portrait of blended family harmony. They stood at royal weddings, attended Trooping the Colour, and were even present at Queen Elizabeth II's funeral in 2022. Yet each time they appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, an unease rippled through the institution. Were they private citizens or unofficial royals? The distinction mattered deeply to those safeguarding the monarchy's traditions. According to palace aides, Prince William had raised quiet concerns as early as 2023, following the king's coronation. He reportedly told advisors, "The crown must not blur between inheritance and inclusion." Senior aides agreed. William's loyalty to the Windsor bloodline and to his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, meant ensuring the monarchy's narrative remained untangled from personal ties. That sentiment grew into strategy, culminating in the king's latest decision. Thus, with his signature, Charles effectively sealed a chapter of personal compromise. His ruling wasn't a punishment, it was a principle. The monarchy, he believed, should no longer juggle affection with identity. "This isn't about love," said one senior royal advisor. "It's about lineage." The crown had spoken, and from this moment onward, its message was unmistakable. Only Windsor blood endures. But what finally pushed the king to act? For years, Camilla's children kept quiet, her grandchildren smiling politely from the sidelines. Yet one event, broadcast to millions, had already exposed the delicate cracks beneath the palace's polished image. It wasn't a scandal or a speech, but a symbolic moment that crossed a line too sacred to ignore. The tipping point. It was May 6, 2023, Coronation Day, the moment Britain crowned King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Millions watched as the royal family paraded through Westminster Abbey in gold regalia. But amid the pageantry, one detail sparked uproar. Camilla's grandchildren, Freddie Parker Bowles and Eliza Lopez, carried her train, the flowing robe of a queen consort. To the public, it looked charming. To traditionalists, it looked wrong. Historically, such roles had been reserved for heirs of the bloodline, princes, dukes, or royal pages. Yet, here were non-royal children walking beside the crown, their every step televised. Tabloids erupted with outrage. The day tradition was broken. Social media trended for days with #NotRoyalPages. Aides later admitted that both William and Anne privately objected to the optics. "It wasn't about the children," said one source, "it was about the precedent." The king himself reportedly defended the decision, telling staff, "They're family, it's harmless." But the backlash grew impossible to ignore. Letters poured into Clarence House by the hundreds, expressing concern over the integrity of the royal image. By June 2023, even parliamentary commentators were discussing blended boundaries in the House of Commons. The monarchy, still fragile after Elizabeth II's passing, could not afford confusion. By the end of that year, the incident had become a turning point. That day planted the seed, an aide recalled. If Camilla's grandchildren could carry her robes, who might carry her legacy? It was a question that cut deep, and one the king could not let linger. And so, nearly 2 years after that fateful coronation, the matter reached its inevitable conclusion. Quiet meetings turned into formal resolutions. What had begun as whispers over optics now became royal doctrine. For King Charles, the decision would be remembered not for its cruelty, but for its clarity. Yet, inside the palace, the consequences would soon become heartbreakingly personal. King Charles draws the line. 3 weeks before the public announcement, Clarence House hosted one of the most discreet royal meetings of the decade. It was September 11, 2025, a gray Tuesday evening, when King Charles III convened his private council in the Green Drawing Room, the same chamber where he once signed Queen Elizabeth's passing proclamation in September 2022. This time, There were only 6 attendees: Princess Anne, Prince William, the Lord Chamberlain, Archbishop Welby, and 2 senior legal advisors. The agenda was titled House of Windsor Structural Clarification. In plain English, it meant rewriting the invisible rules that defined who counted as royal. The king, dressed in a simple navy suit, listened more than he spoke. When the final legal draft was presented, he reportedly paused, looking over the parchment for nearly 5 full minutes before signing. "We cannot serve 2 legacies," he said softly. "Only one line may hold the crown." The order, codename Directive Windsor 24/9, formalized what had long been understood but never enforced. Only direct heirs by Windsor blood shall appear in the line of succession, or within official documentation of royal privileges. It was a constitutional tightening, closing centuries-old loopholes that had allowed ambiguity. By law, it was a clarification. By emotion, it was a severance. Sources present described the moment as eerily calm. Anne, always pragmatic, nodded in quiet approval. William sat still, hands folded, aware this decision would protect his children's legacy. The Archbishop offered a brief prayer for unity within the house and mercy among hearts. When the meeting adjourned, one aide whispered, "It wasn't a conversation about family. It was about survival." But outside the formal chamber, the atmosphere at Buckingham was anything but calm. For one person, this wasn't an administrative act. It was a personal shock. Queen Camilla, who had spent decades walking a delicate path toward acceptance, discovered that the line she had fought so hard to bridge had just been closed, without her knowledge and without her consent. Camilla's reaction behind palace walls. When the official draft reached Queen Camilla's private office at Clarence House on September 13, 2025, aides say she froze. The page before her bore the royal crest and a simple heading, House of Windsor Clarification, approved by His Majesty. Beneath it, her children's names, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, were listed under the section marked Non-Royal Kin. It wasn't just exclusion, it was codified distance. Insiders described her reaction as disbelief, giving way to heartbreak. For over 18 years, she had stood beside Charles through scandal, scrutiny, and slow public forgiveness. To her, this felt like erasure. She thought the blended family had finally found peace, said one longtime staffer. She couldn't understand why it had to be written down like a law. According to multiple palace sources, Camilla confronted the king that same evening behind closed doors. Witnesses outside their chambers reported raised voices, rare for the couple. Camilla reportedly demanded why loyalty no longer matters when affection once did. Charles's reply, though quiet, was resolute. Because the crown must stand apart from personal ties. For the next 3 days, palace staff described a tension so thick it silenced the halls. Meals were taken separately, meetings postponed. Courtiers were instructed to allow distance. Privately, Camilla confided to a close friend, a member of her personal staff since 1998, that she felt betrayed by love disguised as duty. But those near the king insist it wasn't cruelty, but conviction. "He's not punishing her," said one senior aide. "He's protecting the monarchy she will one day leave behind." Still, for Camilla, that explanation offered little comfort. In her heart, the man she loved had drawn a border through her family. As the queen grieved privately, another couple inside the palace felt an unexpected wave of relief. For years, Prince William and Princess Catherine had quietly carried the burden of blurred bloodlines and public confusion. Now, with a single decision, that weight was lifted. But relief, in their case, did not come without empathy, for they knew how much it had cost. William and Catherine's quiet relief. In the early morning of September 15, 2025, William and Catherine arrived at Windsor Castle for a private briefing with King Charles. The meeting, lasting just under 45 minutes, was described as subdued but resolute. The King outlined the formal terms of Directive Windsor 24/9, emphasizing its necessity for public trust and generational stability. William, ever composed, listened intently while Catherine took notes, a habit she'd developed since her earliest days as Duchess. After the meeting, aides overheard William remark, "This will protect George, Charlotte, and Louis from decades of confusion." It was a rare moment of candid satisfaction. He had long feared that if Camilla's descendants remained too closely tied to the monarchy, it could muddle future expectations, especially for Prince George, the direct heir. Catherine, ever diplomatic, reportedly told a confidant, "It's sad, but the monarchy must stay defined to survive." In the quiet of their private quarters that evening, the couple discussed the emotional fallout. Catherine, who has often served as the family's peacemaker, expressed compassion for Camilla. "She must feel isolated," she said. "But Charles is thinking like a sovereign, not a husband." For William, the clarity meant more than comfort. It meant continuity. "My grandmother would have done the same," he reflected, referencing Queen Elizabeth II's unbending loyalty to royal structure. Among their circle, the decision was seen as both practical and historic. "It restores order," said one palace source, "and it's exactly what the late Queen would have wanted, a streamlined monarchy focused solely on the direct line." Yet even as they supported the king, William and Catherine knew this victory came at a cost, one that could haunt the family's private life for years to come. Beyond Windsor's calm and the king's conviction, the outside world was about to explode. By the morning of September 16, 2025, the press had caught wind of the private order. What had been a quiet royal clarification would soon erupt into a global debate, one that questioned loyalty, family, and the very meaning of blood itself. The public and media erupt. By 7 a.m. on September 16, 2025, the story had reached every front page in Britain. BBC Breakfast broke the headline first. Camilla's family officially excluded from royal standing. Within hours, Sky News, The Guardian, and the Daily Mail followed with bolder phrasing, "Monarchy's coldest move yet." Online, the reaction was instant and intense. By noon, hashtags like #WindsorBloodOnly and #Justice for Camilla were trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, each side claiming the moral high ground. Royal reporters flooded Buckingham Palace gates, desperate for comment. Aides, visibly shaken, repeated one phrase: "The king's decision speaks for itself." That phrase, robotic and unyielding, only fueled speculation. Was this Charles asserting strength or masking a family crisis? Supporters praised him as a leader restoring tradition. Critics called it cruelty draped in ceremony. One commentator on BBC Radio 4 said bluntly, "He's secured the crown but fractured the heart behind it." By evening, the debate had become global. CNN ran the segment, "A King's Ruthless Reform," while Le Monde in France described it as "Le divorce de sang," the bloodline divorce. Commonwealth nations reacted more cautiously. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called it a domestic matter, though symbolically profound. In Canada, political pundits framed it as a generational cleanup. Yet everywhere, The conversation was the same. What price must a family pay for the survival of a crown? Across the UK, public opinion split sharply. YouGov polls taken September 17th revealed 61% support for the King's move, citing necessary modernization, while 34% called it unfair and heartless. Newspapers captured the tension perfectly. The Times wrote, "A monarchy untangled, but at what cost?" It was no longer just a family matter. It was a moral reckoning, televised for the world to see. As the world dissected the King's motives, another story quietly unfolded. Not on the palace steps or the evening news, but within private homes in Wiltshire and London. The people at the heart of this drama, Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, and their children, now found themselves in the strangest position imaginable, publicly exiled from a world they never officially belonged to. The fallout for Camilla's children. At 10:15 a.m. on September 18, 2025, Tom Parker Bowles was spotted leaving his London flat carrying a newspaper folded under his arm. The headline read simply, "Removed." He didn't speak to reporters, only muttered, "We were never part of that world anyway." Friends later told The Telegraph that Tom, now 50, took the decision with quiet dignity, privately disappointed, but publicly detached. "He's a man who never wanted palaces, just peace," said one close confidant. For Laura Lopes, the emotional toll was heavier. Living in Wiltshire with her husband and 3 children, she reportedly broke down when the news reached her. Sources say she feared for her children's future, not materially, but emotionally. They were proud of their grandmother, a family friend shared, but now they'll grow up knowing the institution rejected them. The sentiment echoed across her quiet village, where neighbors expressed sympathy and disbelief. Palace insiders confirmed that all invitations for Camilla's grandchildren to upcoming royal events, including Remembrance Sunday 2025 and the Christmas walk at Sandringham, were rescinded. "It's not punishment," said one senior aide, "it's policy." But to the public, it looked cold. The family who once stood beside Prince George and Princess Charlotte at ceremonies would now watch those events from their television screens like everyone else. Privately, Camilla's children are said to harbor no resentment toward William or Catherine. "They know who's really behind the decision," said a close friend. "It's the King's hand, not the heir's." Still, the emotional fracture is undeniable. The Windsor dynasty had tightened its circle, and in doing so it had shut a door that would likely never open again. While public sympathy shifted between the sidelined family and the King's reformist vision, insiders whispered of something deeper: strategy. Behind the emotional fallout was a cold, calculated mission. This wasn't just a family matter. It was the latest move in Charles's grand design to future-proof the crown. The hidden motive. According to senior palace advisors, Directive Windsor 24/9 wasn't born from resentment. It was born from necessity. For years, King Charles III had championed the idea of a slimmed-down monarchy. As early as 2019, while still Prince of Wales, he spoke privately about focusing the crown's duties on a core of fewer than 8 senior royals. After his accession in 2022, that concept became policy. This new decree, sources say, is the final stage of that long-term plan. An internal report commissioned by Buckingham Palace's strategy unit in June 2025 warned that public trust hinges on clarity of lineage and purpose. With growing global scrutiny and declining royal budgets, the monarchy's survival depended on symbolic precision. By removing peripheral relatives, Charles was ensuring that every public appearance, every royal pound, and every duty pointed toward one thing: continuity through the Windsor line. Critics called it ruthless, but even his opponents admitted it was effective. "It's monarchy as brand management," said historian Dr. Evelyn Hart, "and Charles has just made the Windsor brand unbreakable." Behind closed doors, aides confirmed the king's reasoning was painfully pragmatic. "He's thinking 50 years ahead," one said. "He's doing this for George, not himself." Yet strategy comes with scars. For every chart rebalanced and lineage simplified, lives were affected. What looked efficient on paper felt devastating in practice. The monarchy's survival may now be certain, but its humanity, some argue, has never felt more fragile. And so, after the analysis and applause faded, one question remained. What happens to a family when the crown they helped carry suddenly pushes them aside? For Camilla, that question lingered in every quiet hallway and unspoken dinner conversation. She might still wear the crown, but her family had been written out of its story. The crown's cost. In the days following the announcement, Queen Camilla retreated from public view. She was last seen leaving Highgrove House on September 21, 2025, escorted by 2 aides and a single security car. Insiders confirmed she had postponed all engagements until further notice. Within palace walls, her absence was deafening. "The Queen's warmth was always the palace's balance," said one courtier. "Now, there's a chill you can feel." For King Charles, the aftermath was bittersweet. He had achieved what many monarchs before him had only dreamed: a perfectly defined royal line, a monarchy purified of confusion. Yet even his closest advisors saw the toll. "He saved the institution," said one aide, "but he looks like a man who's lost something precious." Those who visited Sandringham in the following week said the king spent long hours alone, walking the gardens once tended by his mother. Inside Buckingham's private corridors, William and Catherine continued their work, poised, grateful, but watchful. They knew the reform had stabilized the crown's future, yet strained the family that carried it. Even the youngest royals sensed the tension. Prince George, just 12 years old, reportedly asked his mother, "Why can't Grandma's family come anymore?" Catherine's gentle reply, overheard by a staffer, summed up the monarchy's eternal dilemma. Because some duties can only belong to a few. In the end, Charles's decision will likely define his reign. It will be remembered not for its sentiment, but for its sacrifice. As one senior royal aide put it best, he preserved the monarchy, but perhaps at the cost of his own peace. History may call it a wise reform, but for the king and queen, it was something far more human. It was the price of duty paid in love. As palace gates close and headlines fade, one truth remains: the monarchy has survived, but the family within it has fractured. King Charles may have secured the Windsor bloodline, yet in doing so, he's drawn a line through his own home. For Camilla, this is no political decision. It's a wound cut by the man she trusted most. History will remember this as the night the king chose the crown over comfort, duty over devotion. The monarchy endures, refined and unbroken, but the cost is written not in ink, but in heartbreak behind palace walls.